The life of William Hayden Campbell was like a riddle, wrapped in a mystery and encased in an enigma. Although at least 5 of his siblings had lived with him at some point, none of their branches of my Campbell family had any information whatsoever on what happened to William Hayden Campbell in his adult life. His life story was always a tale of 2 narratives. There was the sparse narrative told by the various documents I discovered during my search, and then there was the narrative that William Hayden Campbell himself chose to build and cultivate to support his public life. At times, these 2 narratives were noticeably different. By the time I had followed William Hayden Campbell, proverbially from the cradle to the grave, I was not sure how to characterize his life. In fact, there are still many details of his life that are unclear to me. As I started my search for William Hayden Campbell, there was one main question foremost in my mind. What happened to William Hayden Campbell after the Canadian census of 1881? As I continued my search, many other questions emerged. Did he desert his wife and sons, providing no means of support? Was his second marriage legitimate or bigamous? Did he maintain contact with either of his 2 sons, both of whom survived into adulthood and lived out productive lives? At any rate, it is clear that William Hayden Campbell, through the various twists and turns in his life, managed to raise himself out of the home of an immigrant farmer in Cold Springs, Northumberland County, to the exalted halls of power in the Senate chambers of the state of Montana in the USA. The Campbell Isaac Genealogy Project, as I termed it, was a collection of family histories collected in the 1960s, detailing the generations following the emigration from Aberdeenshire, Scotland, of William Hayden Campbell's father and his father's siblings and relatives. This project relied on first-person knowledge of the individuals being documented. There was no reference to church or civil documents in Canada, and online research using the internet was decades away in the future. The Campbell Isaac Genealogy Project was a good general roadmap, but made several critical errors when it came to William Hayden Campbell's family tree. William's mother, Sarah Ann Havens, was misidentified, and the project gave up completely on tracing William Hayden Campbell once he reached adulthood. However, given the available resources in the 1960s, it is generally agreed that this group produced an important genealogical document that was widely circulated among Campbell descendants. Although William Hayden Campbell's parents, William Campbell and Sarah Ann Havens, were married in the St. John's Anglican Church in Woodhouse Parish in Norfolk County, they immediately moved to Northumberland County to put down roots north of Coburg in the hamlet of Cold Springs. William Hayden Campbell was born in Cold Springs on June 29, 1848. If William Hayden Campbell was baptized, as I suspect he was, given the religious background of his father and mother, it would have been in the new Congregational Church at Cold Springs. William's middle name Hayden illustrated the high regard that William's parents felt for the congregational minister, William Hayden. This Congregational Church at Cold Springs would have played an important part in the Campbell family's early life, as his father was the church secretary and a deacon. William Hayden Campbell's younger brothers, Sylvester and John, would most likely have been baptized in this church as well. Unfortunately, the early wooden church at Cold Springs was destroyed by fire, and the early church records of baptisms, marriages, and burials were lost. In early 1853, this church would most likely have hosted the funeral for William Hayden Campbell's younger brother, John, and in 1854, it is certain that William Hayden Campbell's mother, Sarah Ann Havens, would have been buried from this church as well. The story of William Hayden Campbell's mother, Sarah Ann Havens, and his younger brother, John Campbell, ends just down the road from the farm where his family was engaged in subsistence farming. The burying ground for the newly established Congregational Church in Cold Springs had been started in 1835, a decade before the Congregational Church was founded. The cemetery is still active today and contains the memorials for many of the early settlers in Hamilton Township, including Sarah Ann Havens and her third son, John Campbell, David Sidey and his wife, Ann Suter, Reverend William Hayden and his wife and son, and many other notable names. Although William Hayden Campbell's parents arrived in Cold Springs during the church year of 1845-1846, as stated in records held by the United Church Archives, and the family is referenced in a municipal census for Hamilton Township in 1848, the first identification of the members of this family by name occurs in the Census of Canada West in 1851. William Hayden Campbell's father is identified as William Campbell, age 33, born in 1819 in Scotland, and Congregationalist by religious affiliation. William Hayden Campbell's mother is identified as Sarah A. Campbell, age 27, born in Canada, and also Congregationalist by religious affiliation. William Hayden Campbell and his brother Sylvester Campbell are identified as age 4 and 3, respectively, with both being born in Canada. William Hayden Campbell's father is further identified as a farmer, resident in Hamilton Township, Northumberland County. The 1861 Census of Canada West shows William Hayden Campbell's family still resident on the farm in Cold Springs. However, there have been fundamental changes in the family. William Hayden Campbell's mother, Sarah Ann Havens, died in 1854, and William Campbell Sr. has remarried. William Hayden Campbell's stepmother is now Isabella Jane Sidey, daughter of David Sidey and Ann Suter. William Hayden Campbell is recorded as 13 years old and a laborer. The 1861 Census of Canada West badly misspells the surname Campbell and splits William Hayden Campbell's family across two non-sequential pages, making a search for this information more difficult. Interestingly, David Sidey and Ann Suter, parents of William Hayden Campbell's stepmother, are identified as living on an adjoining farm. This Census of Canada West is the last document in which William Hayden Campbell will appear with the rest of his family, although a series of land transfers, particularly in the latter half of the 1860s, show William Hayden Campbell interacting with his father and brother Sylvester in various business transactions. William Hayden Campbell, first son of William Campbell and Sarah Ann Havens, married Catherine Jane Beggs, daughter of John and Mary Ann Beggs, on December 23, 1869, in Port Hope, Northumberland County. This marriage would have an impact on both their lives, probably far beyond what they ever realized or expected at the time of their marriage. Since William Hayden Campbell's family was closely linked to the Congregational Church in Cold Springs, one might wonder why Port Hope was selected as the venue of the marriage. Perhaps William Hayden Campbell was living and either working or going to school in Port Hope at the time. William Hayden Campbell is noticeably absent from his original family in the Census of Canada in 1871. This census shows that his father, William Campbell, and mother, Isabella Jane Sidey, are resident on a farm in Percy Township, Northumberland County. Most likely, William Hayden Campbell is not living with the rest of his family, since he and his bride of less than 2 years, Catherine Jane Beggs, are living elsewhere, possibly still in Port Hope. However, land records show that William Hayden Campbell is still in contact with his father and brother Sylvester, as these three individuals are still involved in land transfers. In 1874, William Hayden Campbell and Catherine Jane Beggs welcomed their first child, a boy, who is named Frederick Havens Campbell, although in documents throughout his life, he is often referred to simply as Fred. Frederick's middle name is undoubtedly in remembrance of William Hayden Campbell's mother, Sarah Ann Havens. Frederick Havens Campbell is born on March 16, 1874, in the town of Smiths Falls in Lanark County, Ontario. On Frederick's birth registration, his father, William Hayden Campbell, is described as a merchant. 4 years later, a second son is born to William Hayden Campbell and Catherine Jane Beggs. This child is named Bertram Lorne Campbell. Bertram is born on October 5, 1878. When Bertram is married for the first time to Helen E. Sullivan on June 25, 1913, in Niagara Falls, New York, he states his birthplace as Gladstone, Manitoba. In a newspaper interview in 1900, Bertram's father, William Hayden Campbell, states that in 1878 he was studying medicine with a Dr. F. E. Thorold in Jamestown, Dakota Territory in the USA. It is clear that William Hayden Campbell and his wife, Catherine Jane Beggs, who would have been pregnant at that time, were a long way from their home base in Ontario. The distance between Gladstone, Manitoba and Jamestown, Dakota Territory is about 260 miles, a significant distance in 1878, but only about 4.5 hours travel time in an automobile today. Research suggests that this might have been the first time that William Hayden Campbell actually pursued a career as a medical doctor. 3 years later, at the time of the 1881 Census of Canada, the William Hayden Campbell family had returned to Ontario and taken up residence in Wellington Ward in the city of Ottawa, according to census data. On the 1881 Census of Canada, William Hayden Campbell lists his occupation as druggist. A search of a dozen or so city directories for Ottawa, spanning this time frame, shows that a W.H. Campbell, a druggist, resided at 236 Nepean Street in Ottawa. This listing appeared first in the 1882 directory and was missing from subsequent directories, suggesting that this W.H. Campbell only lived at this address for 1 year. No listing for a W.H. Campbell appeared in any Ottawa directory in subsequent years. If William Hayden Campbell was planning a career as a druggist in Ottawa, Ontario, his plans were short-lived. Sometime in late 1881, or more likely early 1882, the wheels come off in the relationship between William Hayden Campbell and his wife, Catherine Jane Beggs. William Hayden Campbell leaves his wife and 2 sons and heads for the Montana Territory in the USA. William Hayden Campbell arrives in Glendive, Montana in February 1882. In March 1883, he moves on to Livingston, Montana, and establishes a permanent medical practice in that town. William Hayden Campbell maintains his medical practice in Livingston, Montana, until he moves to Kalispell, Montana, late in 1899. Many of the details in the life of William Hayden Campbell are extracted from contemporary documents, such as An Illustrated History of the State of Montana by Joaquin Miller, Who's Who in the Pacific Southwest, a compilation of biographical sketches, and various newspaper articles. In 1884, William Hayden Campbell petitions for a divorce from Catherine Jane Beggs. Although the divorce petition is written in longhand and contains a significant amount of legalese, it is possible to determine that William Hayden Campbell is an extremely angry individual who has nothing good to say about his wife and quite simply wants out of a marriage that he feels is quite onerous. William Hayden Campbell petitions for custody of his 2 sons, but this is either denied or unenforceable, since Catherine Jane Beggs still resides in Canada. Perhaps because of this legal action, Catherine Jane Beggs will relocate to Stanford Village, which is now part of Niagara Falls, Ontario, Canada, taking her 2 sons with her. Ultimately, William Hayden Campbell secures his divorce from Catherine Jane Beggs on October 16, 1884, in Gallatin County, Montana. 3 months later, in Livingston, Montana, on January 11, 1885, William Hayden Campbell marries Rose Harriet Ferté, daughter of Joseph Edouard and Clotilde Ferté, residents of Livingston, Montana. This marriage is reported in several newspapers, such as the Helena Weekly Herald, published in nearby Helena, Montana. This is a second marriage for William Hayden Campbell and the first marriage for Rose Harriet Ferté. No children are produced from this marriage. This marriage will last literally until death does them part. Steadied by his marriage to Rose Harriet Ferté, William Hayden Campbell expands his medical practice and community involvement in the latter half of the 1880s. However, during the 1890s, William's focus on improving his medical knowledge, developing a political career, and participating in his developing social context increases greatly. William Hayden Campbell attends Gross Medical College in Colorado, graduating in 1890. From 1890 to 1894, William Hayden Campbell serves as alderman for the 2nd Ward in Livingston, Montana. In 1894, he completes another medical course at the Chicago Polyclinic. From 1896 to 1899, he is elected state senator for Park County, Montana, serving as president pro tem of this legislative assembly. From 1898 to 1904, William Hayden Campbell serves as president of the Montana Board of Medical Examiners. Also during this time, he joins the Ancient Free and Accepted Masons and the Benevolent and Protective Order of Elks. Throughout their life together, William and Rose maintain a membership in the Episcopal Church. Late in 1899, a local newspaper, the Livingston Enterprise, prepares an in-depth article on William Hayden Campbell, their now famous native son. This article provides many details in the life of William Hayden Campbell, albeit in generalized terms. This article will be published on January 1st, 1900. The census in 1900 notes that William and Rose are living at 11 Callender Street in Livingston, Park County, Montana. The newspaper article published in the Livingston Enterprise describes the Campbell home as one of the most elegant houses in Livingston. Later in 1900, William Hayden Campbell will relocate his medical practice to the Conrad Bank Building in Kalispell, Flathead County, Montana. On December 18, 1902, William Hayden Campbell's first wife, Catherine Jane Beggs, passed away from chronic bronchitis in Welland, Ontario, Canada. Catherine Jane Beggs is buried in the Fairview Cemetery in Niagara Falls, Ontario, in a large family plot in Section G. There is a tall monument of pink granite standing about 8 feet tall marking Plot 26, which contains the graves of Catherine Jane Beggs, grave 6, Frederick Havens Campbell, grave 8, Frederick's wife, Catherine Matilda Costick, grave 4, Frederick's son, Frederick Ross Campbell, grave 7, and Frederick's daughter, Catherine Ruth Baker, grave 2, and her husband, Michael Francis Baker, grave 3. Frederick Havens Campbell had a third child, a son, named Harry Lorne Campbell. Harry Lorne Campbell disappeared under mysterious circumstances on April 30th, 1933, and his body was never found. The United States Federal Census in 1910 shows William Hayden Campbell and Rose Harriet Furte living at 302 4th Avenue East in Kalispell, Montana. William Hayden Campbell is described as 61 years old in the census, and it may be that his career is slowing down somewhat and perhaps some health issues have developed, although he still maintains an active medical practice. By 1916, William Hayden Campbell has relocated his family again, this time to Los Angeles, California, probably because of declining health. The April 15, 1916 issue of JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, carried an obituary for William Hayden Campbell, MD, stating that he died at his home in that city, Los Angeles, from pneumonia. The next issue of the Journal of the American Medical Association printed a retraction stating, Dr. Campbell, who went to Los Angeles about a year ago, much run down in health, has greatly improved, and is believed to be well on the road to robust health. It would appear that William Hayden Campbell dodged a bullet in that particular medical situation. On January 4, 1919, William Hayden Campbell died at home, and this time there was no retraction. William Hayden Campbell is buried in Section 6, Lot 87, Grave 2, in the Angeles Rosedale Cemetery. 3 years later, on January 31, 1922, Rose Harriet Furte died and was buried beside William in Grave 1. The gravesite of William Hayden Campbell and his second wife, Rose Harriet Furte, is marked with a large black marble monument with the inscription, O Lord, in Thee do I put my trust. Thus ended one man's fascinating life story. Clearly, William Hayden Campbell was intelligent, hardworking, and motivated to seek to improve his station in life. He proved to be a lifelong learner and someone who could maneuver through the nuanced demands of a professional career and successfully follow the twists and turns of social and political life. The one tragedy that stands out in his life is how his first marriage devolved into intense conflict and ultimately ended in a bitter divorce. On balance, probably William Hayden Campbell would characterize his life as successful, and, in the final analysis, who can ask for more than that?